Greetings, Starfighters. I know it's been a while, but it is time for the next episode of Shameless Cashgrab. And before I go a little bit into what the next movie is going to be, I had a revelation last week, and it is one of those, oh my god, how did I just now figure this out moments, because I bought this set back in January. It's an 11-movie collection in a Stranger Things cash-in. Yeah. A lot of you at home probably already guessed that, and you're probably making fun of me right now, so let's just go ahead and move on. The next movie is 1983's Warriors of the Wasteland, starring Fred Williamson, Timothy Brent, and George Eastman. Now, based on the description on the back of the box, it looks like we are getting another Mad Max ripoff, much like Space Hunter turned out to be. Only this time, I know going in that it's probably going to be a Mad Max ripoff. Will it be any good? Who knows, but as long as it's better than, My Mom's a Werewolf. That's honestly all the last 3 movies on this set need to do to win, is be better than My Mom's a Werewolf. But you're probably sick of me going off about how horrible My Mom's a Werewolf is by now. So, just wait a few seconds and you will find out how I feel about Warriors of the Wasteland.
Alright, so now I have watched 1983's Warriors of the Wasteland, which, much like our last movie, has an alternate title. This movie is also known as The New Barbarians. Don't really have anything more to say about that. So before I get into the movie itself, let me just go ahead and give you the plot summary, courtesy of ye olde IMDb. 2 mercenaries help wandering caravans fight off an evil and aimless band of white-clad bikers after the nuclear holocaust. As for the movie itself, we got us an Italian knockoff movie, folks. Sadly, for any cinema snob fans who might happen to have stumbled across this somehow, we don't have a Bruno Mattei or Lucio Fulci movie here for you. But we do have Enzo G. Castellari, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who is still directing films today at the age of 79, by the way. Good for him. One of his most well-known flicks is 1978's World War II movie The Inglourious Basterds, which, as you may have guessed, was the inspiration for Tarantino's film of a similar name, where Eli Roth does the only good thing his entire career and kills Hitler. But enough about that. Let's talk about this movie, which opens much like anyone who watches the Cinema Snob would expect an Italian knockoff picture to open in terms of credits and music. During said credits and music, we see what I think is supposed to be a city being destroyed, but the portion of the screen showing anything other than black space and credits is barely a fourth of the screen, and that's with the player maximized, so I could barely tell what was going on. After this, we get a destroyed something with some dead bodies outside that the camera pans over, while music that sounds like the precursor to C-Punk plays, and we get some text. 2019 AD, the nuclear holocaust is over, it says. I'd make a joke about that, but yeah. Anyway, from there, the camera pans up to reveal our opening location, and we hear a guy talking over a working radio. So I guess the nuclear holocaust was one of the nicer varieties? We meet a group of survivors, speaking entirely in ADR dialogue, about rations and possibly receiving a radio signal, when a roving band of marauders dressed like rejected 80s synth-pop band members arrive on ATVs and motorbikes that are painted in matching colors. So I guess the Sherwin-Williams survived the Holocaust. They attack the camp with guns that make laser noises, and the campers fight back with guns that also make laser noises. None of these guns actually look like anything other than normal guns, mind you. The kind that you can buy today. Unfortunately. In large numbers. Okay, that might have been a little too topical. But, back to the Marauders. Oh my. The shoulder pads. Some of these raiders that, either Templars or Kemplars, can't tell, the dialogue is a little hard to understand over the music, and none of the movies in this set come with captioning, have shoulder pads as big as their heads. Now we know what kind of movies Rob Liefeld watched as a kid. So, a lot of people die on both sides, but oddly only 2 of them actually have any visible signs of injury. I'm not sure, but I think this movie might be a little cheap. So once all that's over, and by the way, the battle sequence went on so long, the soundtrack actually ran out before it was over, the bad guys have destroyed pretty much everything at the camp, because, it's not like it's the post-apocalypse and resources are limited or anything. After this, we meet our main bad guy, who we know is a bad guy because he rips up a Bible and says, "Books. That's what started the whole apocalypse." Can't decide if I should make a homeschooled joke or a 50 Shades of Grey joke. So this guy is the leader of this band of outlaws who dress like Imperial stormtroopers with a leather fetish, and we learn that he is grooming one of the other outlaws to be his replacement. But a character I have dubbed Long-Haired Guy does not approve of this and says so. Main bad guy gives a speech about purifying the world, and thanks to him, or rather his ADR, being clearer, I now know that his group is actually called Templars. I guess Templars makes more sense than Kemplars, but yeah, you never know. You can wait all you want for an Assassin's Creed joke, folks. It ain't coming. You want one of those? Ask my mom. By the way, the Templar leader looks a lot like Ellis, the cokehead from the first Die Hard movie, so from here on out, I shall call him Post-Apocalypse Ellis. So Long-Haired Guy tells Post-Apocalypse Ellis that he heard the signal over the radio that all the people at the camp the Templars killed were using. How? I have no idea. All the people gathered around the radio could barely hear it, but Long-Haired Guy hears it from at least 50 yards away, up on a hill, surrounded by loud vehicles. He insists that there must still be some civilization left somewhere, but this makes Post-Apocalypse Ellis mad. Some rando then shows up to tell Post-Apocalypse Ellis about a bunch of crazies showing up, and Post-Apocalypse Ellis tells his men to exterminate them. We jump back to the camp that was raided at the start of the movie at night and meet who I guess are supposed to be the crazies. A bunch of people dressed in white rags picking around the still-burning cars while making goofy grunting noises. A guy shows up in a car with a green bubble on the roof for some reason, and the random musical sting and close-up tells us he's our main protagonist. After speaking to a guy who somehow survived the Templar raid despite not being able to do anything but lie there all night, he manages to pick off all the so-called crazies with a handgun that actually looks like a laser gun, but makes a noise much closer to the real-life guns than the real-life gun props did. I don't know. The survivor requests the protagonist use the last bullet on him, from a ray gun, okay, which main protagonist does reluctantly. So, yeah, our hero for the picture. After this, we jump to him driving back to what I thought was his home base in broad daylight. Turned out I was wrong. And his car. I just... Okay, at this point, it was at this point watching the movie that I did something that I have never felt compelled to do in the entirety of Shameless Cashgrab's run. I took a screen cap. Now, usually when I'm looking for the pictures for these episodes, I just take what Google Images gives me, which explains why some episodes really only seem to have 10 or 12 pictures, while others cycle through more than 20. But this, even setting aside not wanting to risk spoilers by looking for pictures before I finished watching the movie, I couldn't risk the possibility of there not being a good shot of this thing available for me to use. Maybe there is, and I'm just being neurotic, but just look at it. This is, by far, one of the goofiest fucking cars I have seen in a genre fiction piece in my entire life. Take it in, folks. Take it in. Oh, by the way, you see it too, right? It's not just me. So at this point, we get more dramatic music stings over random close-up of a slingshot being loaded. This goes on for about a full minute before the slingshot actually fires, and continuing this film's primary theme of the sound effects making no goddamn sense, it sounds like a rifle. Call me crazy, but I'm starting to think this movie's going to be tough to take seriously. So after the gun versus slingshot battle, which only lasts about a minute and a half, but feels longer, is over, we see the slingshot's wielder is a kid, and that this is apparently a game these two play regularly. Except protagonist guy, he hasn't been given a name on screen yet at this point, this isn't me being cute, was firing back the same gun he used to kill all the crazies in the last scene, with nothing to indicate he'd switched out his ammo for blanks at any point. Okay then. Here we also learn that the kid is a mechanic. Speaking of this kid, I am pretty sure I've seen this kid in one or two movies the Cinema Snob has reviewed before. And I think those were both Lucio Fulci films, so yeah, I think it's safe to say the kid's Italian. Anyway, yeah, sure, fine, he's a mechanic. And then he fixes up main protagonist's car, yada yada. After that little plot cul-de-sac, we jump over to the Templars chasing down a van of some sort. Remember what I said earlier about the weapons in this movie having noises that don't match their appearance? This applies to the Templar vehicles too. This chase scene ends with the van being run off the road and its two occupants jumping out. The male one gets impaled pretty quickly by an attachment on long-haired guy's car, and the woman is caught in a net, but is freed by protagonist guy who has randomly showed up and managed to hit the rope connecting the net to the car with twin machine guns from yards away. Because in these types of movies, being a badass trumps physics. By the way, we are over 20 minutes in so far, and none of our main characters, at least those who seem to be our main characters, have names yet. The car battle that follows the rescue is incredibly goofy. It's like a bunch of tweens trying to reenact Mad Max with Tonka trucks in a public park. Also, lots of random needless close-ups, not just of characters, but of like hood ornaments, and the rescued woman just standing there, not even trying to get out of the way of two armed vehicles going at each other. Long-haired guy interrupts the battle, much to the irritation of a character I have dubbed Mohawk Man, and we finally get names for two of these people. Protagonist guy is named Scorpion, and long-haired guy is named Shadow. These two dorks aren't cool enough for those names, so I'm going to keep calling them Protagonist guy and long-haired guy. Anyway, these two apparently know each other, which is why long-haired guy stopped the fight, since he figures that Protagonist guy would have just curb-stomped Mohawk Man, who is the one being groomed to take over the Templars according to that earlier scene in the movie. Here, we also learn the motivation of post-apocalypse Ellis, whose name is given as, and I am not making this up, One. Though the way some of the dub actors say it, you can't be blamed for thinking it might be Juan. It's One, though, as the loneliest number that you'll ever do. And One's goal is to wipe out the rest of humanity that survived the apocalypse so the Earth can start over. I guess One is either hoping there weren't any survivors on other continents, or the Templars have working boats somewhere. The woman survivor gets in the protagonist guy's car, albeit a bit reluctantly despite protagonist guy having saved her, but, I can't say I blame her in this instance. I imagine a lot of dudes would have expected some kind of sexual favor in return for rescuing her from a bunch of nihilists. Hell, some dudes seem to think that just being born is enough reason for them to get sex. So we get some more stuff with the Templars that's all just set up for Mohawk Man getting himself killed, and a final duel between either Post-Apocalypse Ellis and Protagonist Guy, or Long-Haired Guy and Protagonist Guy, whichever. And we cut to Protagonist Guy and the woman he rescued, named Pending, being followed by Fred Williamson. And of course, the music that plays over the first black character in the movie is a hip-hop beat. Why should we expect anything different? But before we can be properly introduced to the Fred Williamson character, suddenly it's nightfall, and we go from protagonist guy checking the still unnamed woman's injury to a sex scene that looked like it was filmed in a fish tank so fast I actually hurt myself laughing. I mean, they have sex in a tent that looks like it was made out of bubble wrap, for crying out loud. We jump from there to the next sequence, and I'm not kidding, there's barely a few seconds between protagonist guy and the still unnamed woman stopping their post-coital campfire chat, which itself was really short and kind of pointless, and when Mohawk Man and a few other Templars trap protagonist guy's car in a place that looks like one of the quarries they filmed the New Zealand-based Power Rangers seasons in. This scene has a lot of stupid tactical decisions made by protagonist guy, but of course he has to do that, so that Fred Williamson can reveal he's one of the heroes by saving protagonist guy by, and get this, using a bow with a sniper scope on it to fire an explosive arrow into the ground near protagonist guy, so protagonist guy can dive into it and not get his head chopped off by a contraption on Mohawk Man's car. Because that just makes so much more sense than just blowing up Mohawk Man's car. I'm starting to think this movie's a little silly, you guys. So protagonist guy pulls himself up onto Mohawk Man's car, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and Mohawk Man ends up dead. Called it. One Templar is left alive, and protagonist Guy lets him go so he can tell Post-Apocalypse Ellis that Mohawk Man is dead. After the battle, protagonist Guy drives on till he hits a lake or a river or whatever and stops to get water, because it's not like that would be contaminated or anything. And we learn that Fred Williamson's character is named Nadir. We are now at the halfway point in the movie, and we still don't have a name for our female lead, but we do have a settlement filled with more nuclear Holocaust survivors. If you can tell already that protagonist Guy and Fred Williamson are going to have to protect these people from the Templars, congratulations, you don't need an eye exam. When our heroes arrive at the camp, there's a minor standoff that involves choppy editing and unnecessary zoom-ins. Fred Williamson points out the survivors are nervous enough they might start shooting. The leader of the camp, who I guess is a priest, is pretty sure our heroes aren't Templars, but that's about it. Well, fair enough. So he steps forward and asks our heroes what they want. And protagonist Guy says he wants medical treatment for the still unnamed female character's wounded arm. I would remind you this woman has been in the movie for well over 20 minutes. She's been rescued by and had sex with the lead. She's had dialogue, but still no name. Or if she does have a name, it was said so unclearly or was drowned out by the score. So it's at 46:30 that I decided to cheat and look up her name on the movie's IMDb page. Alma's her name, apparently. Good, now I have something to call her. When protagonist Guy offers to trade in exchange for the medical care, the leader says that won't be necessary, and protagonist Guy is surprised by this. He asks Fred Williamson why the people at the camp don't want anything, to which Fred Williamson replies, they're from a sect. They believe in something called God. Okay. According to dialogue spoken mere minutes before our heroes arrive at the camp, we learn that the nuclear holocaust that predates the movie happened 9 years ago. So 2010 by this movie's timeline. Insert Tea Party joke here. We don't have an age for Fred Williamson's character, but Williamson himself was 45 at the time the movie was made, so we can guess Nadir is probably in his early 40s. And the Templars are a known entity amongst the general populace of the post-apocalypse. So am I really supposed to believe that a man alive before the end of the world, less than a decade later, just completely forgot what religion was while trying to survive being killed by an extremist religious group? As Spoonie once said, there's willing suspension of disbelief, and then there's insulting my fucking intelligence. I would say verisimilitude compromised, but then again, this is the movie where ray guns make regular gun noises and regular guns make ray gun noises, so, I'm probably just overthinking this. At this point, the movie tries to get deep on us with a conversation that's not very subtly about faith. However, since it's boring and clearly tossed in to make the movie seem more layered than it actually is, I'm just going to skip over it. I'm also going to skip over the scene after that. That's more stuff with the bad guys, since the scene really only exists to set up the inevitable final confrontation. I have to admit, I've kind of checked out of the movie at this point. Yada yada, stuff about a prophecy, the leader of the camp is named Father Moses, because fuck subtlety. Fred Williamson gets laid off screen, a Templar finds the camp, yada yada. The next action set piece comes after protagonist Guy leaves the camp, deciding that staying would be putting them all in danger, since post-apocalypse Ellis is after him, and almost immediately he ends up being chased by Templars on motorbikes and cars even more goofy looking than his own. This ends with protagonist Guy getting captured. Alive, of course, because post-apocalypse Ellis just killing him on the spot would make too much sense. So there's a little speechifying and holy crap rape scene. Yeah. So it's badly lit and the editing is all over the place, but it looks like post-apocalypse Ellis is violating protagonist Guy when he gets interrupted by a Templar riding in on a motorbike to tell him about the camp where Alma, Moses, and Fred Williamson are at. Yeah, thank goodness for that interruption. I mean, wow, I am so ill-equipped to talk about this kind of thing. Certainly not going to make a joke about it. Yeah, I need a moment, so here, have a kitty. Okay, I'm back. So post-apocalypse Ellis sends all but 2, make that 3, of his Templars out to attack the camp, and the film makes sure we see every single Templar vehicle leaving to show the scale of the upcoming invasion, by which I mean to pad the film's running time. Oh, and the Templars left behind, they're there to finish off protagonist Guy. Gee, I wonder if he's going to escape. Spoiler alert, he escapes when, for no apparent reason, the guards untie his hands so they can drag him around the mud with their motorbikes. Don't know why his hands needed to be free for that, but okay. Now, I did turn out wrong with one prediction. I thought protagonist guy would kill them himself. Instead, he gets help from Fred Williamson firing off his exploding arrows. Okay, that was kind of cool. Not cool enough for me to stop feeling like I need a hot shower, but still. So we cut to the Templars arriving at the camp, and a minute later we see the camp in flames and Post-Apocalypse Alice walking around. The big fight happened off-screen, and protagonist guy and Fred Williamson didn't make it back in time. Okay, didn't expect that. But Alma and Father Moses and some of the others are still alive, so maybe they'll show up while the survivors are being lined up by the Templars. Or maybe not, as it's nighttime now and protagonist guy is still recovering, while the kid from the plot cul-de-sac earlier fixes his car again. And then it's day again, and for some reason only now is long-haired guy sending people back to the main camp to check on the 3 Templars left to take care of the protagonist guy. Okay, either this is actually the next day and the Templars are still at the camp they raised, or to steal a line from MST3K, space is warped and time is bendable. So protagonist guy is healed and has some new weapons, thanks to the kid, and Fred Williamson is tagging along, but he loves a good fight. Okay, fine. Post-Apocalypse Ellis rants at the camp survivors, who he still hasn't killed yet, which does not fit with his group's MO in the movie up to this point, but he needs to drag it out as long as possible for the big damn hero moment. Which thankfully doesn't take too long to happen, and they brought the kid. Really? The little kid with the slingshot is in on the rescue? Really? I just... forget it, let's just get this movie over with. The final battle drags, with a big chunk of it just being protagonist guy and Post-Apocalypse Ellis looking at each other through smoke. After what feels like forever, Post-Apocalypse Ellis finally fires on protagonist guy, and oh my god, protagonist guy's armor he had on under his coat is so fucking goofy, you guys. I'd be laughing more right now if it weren't for, well, you know. So the battle picks up again, and the Templars, who lay waste to whole caravans of people in minutes, are brought down by a child with a slingshot and a guy with a bow and arrow, who isn't named Clint Barton or Oliver Queen. Kind of anticlimactic. Post-Apocalypse Ellis gets away in a vehicle, with protagonist guy following him after killing long-haired guy, though not before long-haired guy manages to kill Father Moses and 2 other people. So yeah, most of the caravan is dead now. Good job, heroes. Anyway, while Fred Williamson and the little kid finish off the straggler Templars, protagonist guy finally starts to catch up with Post-Apocalypse Ellis, and the chase ends with a drill attachment that had been added to protagonist guy's car, going through the back of Post-Apocalypse Ellis's car, and Post-Apocalypse Ellis got drilled in the back, of course. I'm debating whether or not to include a clip of Film Brain going, symbolism! Forget it. So, we get, big scream, dead bad guy's foot somehow stays on the gas, crashes into a rock wall, and that's all she wrote. Protagonist guy returns to the camp, Fred Williamson leaves, freeze frame credits, and let's get the hell out of here. Stranger Things similarities. It has a kid in it who uses a slingshot. Final verdict. As you may have guessed from past episodes of this show, I write these scripts as I watch the movie as opposed to the almost certainly superior method of watching the movie twice and taking notes during the second viewing, which is how most internet reviewers do it. I knocked out the first draft of this section at about the halfway point of the movie under the assumption that I'd only be making some minor changes along the way. That went right out the window when that happened. I initially was going to put this movie down as some prime MSTing material. Heck, up until that, it would have only taken some very minor editing to make it PG enough for actual MST3K if we get another Netflix season. But now, I just can't recommend this movie to anyone outside of completionists for Italian exploitation cinema, and even that is being generous. I mean, I'm 35 years old as of this recording, and I've watched a lot of movies, so yeah, I've seen rape scenes before, but as I've gotten older, I've found that, far from being desensitized to it, I just get only more and more uncomfortable with such sequences. Heck, I'll be honest, were it not for the fact that I'm covering this movie for a show, I might have just stopped right there. Keyword might have. Not 100% certain, but still likely. Speaking of temptations, I considered briefly putting this movie at the bottom of the ranking for when I do the follow-up episode after the last movie of this set. But, as uncomfortable and unwelcome as that one scene was, it was just one scene. The rest of the movie isn't quite that bad. Not good, mind you, but tolerable in a cheesy sort of way, as these Italian knockoff pictures usually are. So as bad as that one scene is, and believe me, it is very fucking bad, at least it was over fairly quickly. Compare that to... well, you already know what movie I currently have ranked dead last right now, so no need to speak its name again. That movie was pretty much unrelentingly bad from the first scene onward. Yes, it didn't have a rape scene in it, so there's that. But that's damning with faint praise. So currently, Warriors of the Wasteland is only the second worst movie in the Strange Things set. But it is a very close race. So, tune in next time for the penultimate entry in the Strange Things set, Alien Contamination. So, which Alien movie do you think this one's knocking off? The first one, or the James Cameron one?